speeding up competitiveness and connectivity in the GNS. I hope everyone have enjoyed the break and were able to talk and get to know their fellow delegates. Now we will proceed to our first session for the day, which is entitled Examining the Growth Moment Challenges. To begin, let me welcome on stage our moderator for this session, Mr. Madhura Kumaduta, Director of Trade and Investment Facilitation Department of MI.
We would also like to invite our first round panelists. First, we would like to call on Dr. Satabandit NCC Mai, Director General of the Center of Macroeconomic Policy and Economic Restructuring of the National Institute of Economic Research, Lao PDR.
Dr. Jen Guntong, Director of the Department of World Economy and Integration, National Center for Socio-Economic Information and Forecast of Vietnam's Ministry of Planning and Investment.
The third is Dr. Prasad Poon, Senior Expert on Macroeconomic Policy of the Fiscal Policy Office of Thailand.
Fourth panelist, Dr. Tay Nguyen, Director of Trade Development Division, Myanmar Trade Promotion Organization of Myanmar's Ministry of Commerce. Please give them a round of applause, and I'll give the floor to Mr. Duda to lead this discussion.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first technical session on examining the growth momentum challenges. So, as we heard this morning from the keynote speaker, how the fourth industrial revolution will enable disruptive business models to decentralize our economies as we move from the value systems based on ownership to ones enabling access. The disruptive technologies will fundamentally reshape how we do business both individually and at our company level. And it is disrupting almost every industry in every country. And the depth of these changes herald the transformation of the entire system of production, management, and governance. What will be absolutely important is to how we equip ourselves to harness the power of this technology to transform the Greater Mekong sub-region for better. The growth leap in the Greater Mekong sub-region has been substantial as compared with the decades past, but in the world driven by dynamic transformations and technologies coming out at a great speed, there is a recognized need to speed up the growth momentum. This session will explore the prevailing conditions, factors, and challenges that limit Greater Mekong sub-region economies from advancing at a speed that meets the fast-changing needs of the world. We have a team of eminent speakers today here. We have Dr. Satabandit Insiam Nai. He is the Director General of Center for Macroeconomic Policy and Economic Restructuring, that's from the National Institute of Economic Research, Lao PDR. And we have Dr. Tran Tuan Tang. He is the Director, Department of World Economy, Integration, and from the National Center for Socio-Economic Information and Focus, Ministry of Planning and Investment, Vietnam. We have Dr. Prasad Poon as a Senior Expert on Macroeconomic Policy, Fiscal Policy Office of Thailand. We have Dr. Tay Nguyen. He is the Director, Trade Development Division, Myanmar Trade Promotion Organization, Ministry of Commerce. Before we proceed with the discussion, I would just brief about the structure. We will have 12 minutes of presentation. So if you have PowerPoint, we will have the facility here. But it will be more better that we give the wrap up of the discussions. And after that, after giving the floor to the speaker, we will have the Q&A session from the floor. So this is how we'll structure in the proceeding. Then there might be some questions that I will take for the key speakers. Before we start, I would like each of the speaker to give a brief introduction
about their work and their current, current perspective, so that the audience will get a feel of wow with the speakers about the speakers' profile.
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank MI for inviting me to this very important event. My name is Tabadit Chiang Mai from the Center for Macroeconomic Policy and Economic Restructuring, National Institute for Economic Research. Actually, this is my good opportunity, to share Laos' experience on the growth, the issues and challenges, under the theme of turning around and take off. Which is really good because in my office, actually, SIMA is working on, as a think tank of the government to provide, how to say, the macroeconomic situations, the conditions, and also provide policy recommendation for the government, for the planning. So this is very important event, and of course, not only to share our experience, but I also really interested and also really grateful to listen to other speakers and also the audience about the experience of other countries in terms of growth and challenges and how can we move together. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tay Nguyen from Ministry of Commerce. I'm very pleased to be here with you all, and also thank you, Mekong Institute, and especially Dr. Wacharat, who I know since last 5 years ago. So this is very great chance for me here on behalf of Myanmar to share with our neighboring countries, include neighboring countries and also GMS member countries, and the sharing knowledge over the various perspectives from private sector, government, and academics. So it is very nice to be here, and I will contribute as much as possible for the examining the momentum and the group momentum for challenges within GMS country. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mekong Institute, for inviting me to be here, sharing with you the experiences from Vietnam. My name is Thang from working for Ministry of Planning and Investment. I think we may hear about the story about planning and planning in Vietnam that's taken to from the central economies, and now we still have a planning investment ministries, and we understand that the understanding the growth and the sources of growth is that's something quite concern among different countries, and that's a long-term story. And I'm very happy to share with you the experiences from Vietnam that we get since the reform in 1986, and we hope that from our experiences we can have a good cooperation and connection in the near future.
Good morning. I'm honored to be invited by the Mekong Institute to join this very important meeting. And my name is Prasad Poon. I'm from the Ministry of Finance. My work deals mostly with macroeconomic policy analysis and planning and formulation for Thailand. And I think in my work I have looked at the greater economic impact from the Mekong region. I think when we look at Thailand, our trade with the neighbor country 10 years ago, 20 years ago, is only 3% of our total export. Now it's becoming simply just a 4 countries, CLMV country, now it's 10%. So we can see that our trade with the neighbor country and China is becoming an important part of Thai economy and tourism, that we receive a lot of tourists from China and the ASEAN country. So I think it's becoming closer economic integration in this region that is very important for the Thai government to work closely with our neighbor and partner. So today I hope to share with you our economic policy, and I think we can learn from one another on how we execute our economic policy to promote the economic prosperity in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and let's proceed to the technical sessions. May I request Dr. Satabandit to provide your insight on the theme of this discussion today on examining the growth momentum challenges. Dr. Satabandit, please. Yeah, you like. I think you have to use this one.
Okay, so good morning again, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen. I would like to share the Lao experience in terms of economic development and focusing on the source of growth and issues and challenges that Lao is facing in order to see, how can we move forward, for Laos as just one jigsaw in the region. So this is the purpose of this presentation. And first of all, I would like to just give you the overview of Lao economy, its drivers and issues. You may already know, from the keynote speakers and this morning presentation about the different countries. So Lao is just a small country with just 6.5 million people. So rather big with the big markets. And the good thing is just that we are located in the middle of the GMS, as a so-called landlocked country before. But now we talk a lot about the land link. So we try to transform from landlocked to land link. So this is the theme that we are trying to promote rather than saying, okay, we are locked by the land. And this picture is just to give you again, to show you that Laos is among the top growing economies in the region in terms of the growth. But this is because Laos starts from a very small base, of the GDP in terms of GDP value. From Mr. Tanaka this morning, it's just only 17 billion, in terms of value. So this is when it is more, then of course it can grow faster compared to other big economy. And in general, so we have the Vision 2030 and 10-year strategy to 2025, where we try to become the higher middle income countries by 2030 with the GDP per capita of 4 times that of 2015. So this is our aim, our goal, our long-term goal. And in general, we can achieve quite a lot of things in terms of development. Would it be in terms of turning from the low-income countries to lower middle-income countries, in 2011? And of course, we can, increase our per capita GDP from less than 500 to 2,400 recently, 2017. And also, after we open the trade, we can increase the the trade openness, export plus import GDP from 30% to 70% nowadays. But I think it's still small compared to other countries, but at least we can have this achievement. And other thing about the social aspect, we can improve the HDI, Human Development Index, and also we can reduce the poverty rate, by half, from almost 50% to 23% in the last, survey 2030. Hopefully, recently it could be lower, but I don't know. I have to check after the next survey. So I will go directly into the issues because, of course, if we talk about the achievement, there's quite a lot of things to say, but that's not very interesting. I think the issue for Laos, which could be related to the region as well can be summarized as follow. First, even we have high growth, the economic structure, still changes slowly and remain traditional. And most of people still engage in the low productive agricultural sector. As you can see in the figures that about 70%, 60-70% people still living in the agricultural sectors. Of course, the agricultural share of GDP is a decrease, but many people still living there. And you can see from the graph that other manufacturing and especially the resource sectors playing very important role in the economy. And this graph will again supplement the previous graph, showing that in terms of GDP structure, you can see that agriculture contributes to the economy is fairly few compared to other manufacturing and service sector. But in terms of how to say people, labor, you can see that many people are living there. And the disparities in terms of productivity is also being observed in the different sectors in the economy. You already know that Laos is a resource-rich country where we have energy and mining, which is the industry that really contribute to the growth. And you can see that the productivity, the value added per workers in these two sectors are so huge compared to the other sector. But only few people is living there, gaining from that development. And other issue is actually this is what I already said, that the growth of Lao PDR is more or less driven by the resource sector. And in some point in time, especially during 2005-2006, it contributed as much as 20% of the growth. That means if we get 8%, 2 percentage points is from the resource sector, something like that. So this is something that we are not so sure that we should be proud of, or we have to rethink about that. This contribution, because this is not sustainable. I think there's some technical issue. Okay, and this graph is also shows the same thing. If you look at this is the contribution recently, the recent contributions of the energy sectors, the blue one, and of course the mining sector is now contribute negatively because of the stop of the moratoriums in terms of mining, but energy still play important role. But after now, I don't know. But at least from the previous speaker, we can see that. And the FDI in this sector is, is around 60%, in these sectors. It's just slow. Okay, and this one is just to confirm, by more details, the growth, the driver for growth, where we can see that the top one, the green one, is the energy, and the second, when we compare the growth that is higher than the average, higher than the GDP growth in general, we can see that energy is roughly 20% on average within 5 years, recent 5 years, and the second is construction and services, you can see. And the third ranking is services. Would it be the transportation, the tourism, ICTs, or whatever? So this is the detailed growth driver. And other thing is about the export. Again, because as I said, growth is driven by resource sector. In the export sectors, it is not really diversified. And it is concentrated basically in the primary low value added and products and those from resource sector. And the graph will show you clearly that more than 60%, 70% is from electricity and mining. This is for the export. And other thing is that Laos is, as an small open economy, we still dependent on the external finance for growth. And this will show you okay. So this is the source of investment for the 8th National Social Development Plan, where about 60%, let's say about 60% are from the FDI, and the others 20% are from other 15% is from the ODA. So that means we rely on external finance for growth. And, but for the domestic, credit and also budget is very few. And basically, this FDI is from the top 3 countries, from China, Thailand, and Vietnam, and concentrate in the electricity, mining, construction sector. That's the top 5, followed by the agriculture and services. For social issues, you can see that the poverty rate declined, as I said in the beginning, but it is still vulnerable to fall back. This is really true because, when we look at the figures from the ASCAP, we can see that the people, about 60% of people who are in we call the transition class, which means they are just above the poverty line, cover 60%. That means if there is external shock, if there's something happen, they are very vulnerable to fall back into poverty. So this is another issue that we have. And also, this is unavoidable things that disparity between urban and rural area, between and within regions also increase, which we saw in inequality of people's livelihoods, especially those who are living in agricultural sectors. And we also have many things, many constraints, which I cannot talk all for this session. But basically, other issues include the infrastructure development. So we lack of infrastructures, high cost of transportation, lack of strong economic resilience to external and internal and external shock, and also the country's potential advantage are not fully utilized in an efficient manner. So all these are, just to summarize, are the issues that we have. And this is just an example that we have the road, we have the length of road increased, but 60% are still earthen and gravel road. And in terms of qualities of the road, you can see Laos is ranks behind other countries in the region, and also the logistic performance index also ranks the least in the region as well. And this will provide you with the holistic approach. I took this from the Global Competitiveness Index from the World Economic Forum, and you can see that actually we have many constraints in that, but the problematic areas where the country cannot achieve to pass the top 100 ranking. So we are ranked more than 100. Is in terms of infrastructure development, education, health, technological readiness, and this, and also the market side. This is the thing that could complement what I have just mentioned before. Okay, so now I will talk about the last part of my presentation. This is about the potential and challenges for future growth. Okay, so as I said, being in the middle of the GMS, we can think of it as a potential, because we can, if we manage it well, we can be a potential. We can be the inland logistic hub of the region. That means that the trade between Thailand, China, Vietnam, whatever, can be through Laos with lower cost. I hope in the future. And also we also have other untapped potentials that has not yet fully utilized. Would it be in terms of cultural, ecotourism, and beauties of natural resource or whatever. But there's still risk, that when we say that we try to transform from landlocked to landlink, we have to be careful because when we say so, there's a risk that it's just create no spillover effect at all. Because when we say landlink, people just pass by. They pass from Thailand to Vietnam, from Thailand to China. If we do not have absorption capacity, that will turn into something like we get nothing from that landlink. So this is the risk that we have to think about. And the challenge is how to utilize the untapped potential. I mean, in terms of what I have just said, landlink, or even in terms of utilizing the natural resource, the beauties and tourism, for example. So what we need, actually this is still challenging. When I say we need, that doesn't mean that I can do, but actually this is the challenge that we have to think about. So we need a good management of natural resource. This is the first thing. And second thing is we need to strategically plan for infrastructure development. And of course, the most importantly is we need closer cooperations among neighboring countries in terms of infrastructure, industrial estates, and township development. Why is it so? Because when we think about landlink, we have to think about connecting some, different towns from Thailand, China, Vietnam. We know that there are so many initiatives, in this region. GMS, Mekong Lansang, the Build the Road, and many other initiatives. And we have, in Thailand, Thailand has EEC. They have other development plan in Vietnam as well, in China as well. So when we try to link, Laos also have the Laos China Railway, for example, development plan. So if we just do it by ourselves, trying to be, to link the land together, I don't think that will really benefit Laos or even the region. But what I say is that we need to have closer cooperation. We have to look at others as well. This is where we have to turn around and see what others is doing and how can we connect with other countries. If we can do so, of course, Laos will benefit from that in terms of the trade, increasing the trade, and also if the other countries can trade through Laos, Thai trade with China, with Vietnam through Laos, the trade volume could create economy of scale and reduce cost, and then will benefit the region as a whole. And other potential that we have is all about the people. We know that we still and will enjoy demographic dividend, where a lot of people in the working age, compared to the older ones, and the ratio is high for Laos, and we will enjoy this until 2050. So this is something that very important, that we really need to focus on human resource development in order to gain from this bonus, from demographic bonus. And this is other challenge is to maintain high growth and make population at large benefit from the rapid development and growth. So as I said, Laos is not diversified economy, so we need to diversify source of growth beyond the resource sector. So we need to focus on other sectors, agriculture, improve productivities in agriculture through innovation and technology transfer. Yes, and also complementary to that, we also need to focus on poverty reduction, continuous poverty reduction, and improve economic resilience and to external and internal shock. And this is my last slide, I think, is to improve the competitiveness and providing enabling environment for growth. So this is just to address what I have just mentioned, in the graph showing the global competitiveness. One, we have to deal with the existing infrastructure development, lower the transportation costs, improve business environment, and also trying to utilize and development of innovation and technology. So I think this is all of my presentations for today. So what I really want to focus on is just one is about the corporations, about in terms of infrastructure development, and other thing is about the human resource development in order to to enable people to adapt and utilize the advancement of the modern technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Satabandi, for giving us a good insight into the Lao experience and how to move forward to take up the challenges of the global momentum. So we have highlighted the key issues, particularly despite having high growth, Lao economy still strives to remain as traditional. And you have also mentioned how from the landlocked image Lao have moved to be land link, but the spillover of the economy of the development has not really taken place in the case of Lao. And you have also come out with some of the issues and recommendations that to put forward. I hope when we open up the Q&A, there'll be a lot of questions and clarifications coming forward to see how we can benefit from the development taking place with Thailand 4.0 and also China at the end, and how Lao can get benefit through this to build up networking and connectivity, improve connectivity in the region. Thank you once again. May I invite the next speaker, Dr. Tam, to kindly provide his reflections on the theme of this session. Your topic, right? Yeah. This slide.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. For the growth story of Vietnam, we just would like to say that Vietnam have some good example for economic growth, but also experience some bad lessons that we wish to share. Actually, the growth of Vietnam is quite high compared with some other countries. We got on average in the last 10 years, before last 10 years, just around 7% per year, and then now we got about around 6 or 6.5%. It's quite high, and the good example of Vietnam is the reform in terms of expand the economy, not in terms of in-depth growth. What I mean is the growth model in Vietnam is based on the resource expansion, including the expansion of labor and including the call for FDI, the privatization, and the growth of the private sector in Vietnam. Just make the supply side of the growth function, and we have some factor that explain the growth, including the labor, investment, technologies, and some other things relating with the institutional reform. In each factors, Vietnam have some good thing and some bad thing. This morning we hear about some appreciation about the education in Vietnam, internet speed in Vietnam. Yes, yeah, thank you for highly appreciate about that. But there's some another issue. Yeah, Vietnam have good primary education, but we have a bad university education. That's a big question. Vietnam do not have a good, really good university, and we got some problem just relating with the innovation and R&D research or something like that. So that story transform from good primary education to a good higher education. That's now one of the bottleneck of Vietnam, especially for the future. Relating with the labor reform, yes, we are planning economy before, and we try to develop the labor markets. So actually, so far it's quite good in terms of the matching process. People seem take less time to get a new job they can do a job that relevant with their background. It's quite good in terms of labor reform. But we got stuck in terms of transforming from agriculture to manufacturing because of many firms now hiring the labor from agriculture, but they're just hiring in some ages for example, from 20 to 35, and then they stop, and that's a problem because the rate of unemployment or underemployment among the age before after 35 is quite high, and that's a problem. We got a bottleneck in that case. So going into another successful story of Vietnam relating with the investment. Vietnam is quite successful in terms of attracting FDI, and we must confess that most of FDI now in Vietnam is the labor intensive, and foreign investors just try to take the cheap labor cost in Vietnam, and the consequence of that is that we get quite a little value added in terms of from the production from FDI sector. FDI sector share about 70% of total export of Vietnam, and FDI sector just share about 20%, more than 20% of GDP. So that's another problem, and another problem relating with the linkage between FDI sector and the domestic sector. And that's really problematic, as the government now have a strategy to overcome those issues. We have a strategy to develop the supporting industries. First of all, Samsung is quite a successful story in Vietnam when we attract more than 6 billion or more than 8 billion from Samsung. And it seems that Samsung come at the same time with a lot of supporting in FDI company also coming, and then it's there the story that FDI they seem to work isolatedly within the economy, and that's make the domestic sector sometimes not get benefit, but also get the negative effect because of the negative spillover effect because of the competition. Not only competition in the export, but competition in terms of the input market. Yeah, quite a few analysis about the competition in the input market. But from the realistic, we see that that's really the problem in Vietnam or in the future because of more good labor working for FDI sector, and then the domestic company cannot get the good labor in some way. Also relating with the investment factor, we have a SOE. I think SOE that's some specific story of Vietnam compared with some other GMS country. SOE share dominance in GDP and also in the total investment. And yeah, 20 years ago, the government tried to privatize, and so far until now, I think in terms of the number of SOEs, they reduced quite sharply. But in terms of the total investment, just about 10% reduces over 20 years. And so privatization of SOE, that's another constraint of the further growth in Vietnam, because we all understand that SOE with a lot of privilege, with a lot of support from the government, and then it will work in some way inefficiently. And the bottleneck of privatization of SOE is another bad example of growth story in Vietnam. So we go to the trade. Trade is quite a good factor. That we may hear about the booming of trade in Vietnam. Actually, last year we got about 20%, more than 20% of export growth, and we got the same percent of import growth, even higher. That means Vietnam really become the manufacturing. We import material and export, and thus make Vietnam become get benefit in somehow. But many story facing by the government. Thus, Vietnam actually at last Vietnam earn how many percent from that? And we all know that because of we import for export. We export more, you have to import more, and then the very rate of export is quite low. Yeah, that story is, you can find a lot example. Another factor relating with the growth function is the technology. Yeah, like I say initially about the education. In terms of the technology, I have an example here. Here we got the competitiveness index of Vietnam. Just so I take it from World Economic Forum, some indicator. And what you can see from here is that there's some very key indicator of improving the competitiveness, including the infrastructure, innovation, technology readiness. All of that, Vietnam got quite low, and it will take time to improve the situation. We got some good sub-indicator, including the macroeconomic, including primary education, but some very key important that affect the competitiveness of the country, we got very low. That's a problem. The next example is just compare with some other country, including here that's Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. And so compare with some other Asian country, we are happy that we own private together because we own in the lower group, including Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam, is some indicator like innovation, technology readiness, or some other. Laos, Vietnam, and Myanmar, we all get a lower group. And that's really the challenge of Vietnam, not only Vietnam, but some neighbor country to improve the situation. The institution reform is quite a good example of Vietnam, at least for recent 5 years. We do quite good business environment reform. The government have some quite a decisive regulation to improve the situation. And actually, at least for the recent 2 years, the expectation of generated by the government that they are doing the reform. That's something good will happen in the future. That really make explain for the booming of FDI inflow in Vietnam for some recent years, and also encourage the private investment. So regulation reform is quite good, and does explain quite a lot for the growth of Vietnam, including the privatized, including the combine of domestic and foreign, and including the trade reform or something like that. And I think institutional reform, that's quite a successful story that if you have more time, we can share with you about that. And we also have some good example in terms of trade, in terms of global participate FTA. I think among 4 countries, Vietnam is the only one who participates CPTPP, and also with the FTA with EU. That's we not only get the real benefit from that, but it generates the expectation for the reform in terms of business environment and some other factors that really push Vietnam go further in the near future. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Tan, for giving your insights, especially highlighting the key issues, how Vietnam is able to attract foreign direct investment, but the linkages between the foreign direct investment and the domestic sector, particularly for the supporting industries, has been an issue. And state-owned enterprises dominance and how the government is trying to restructure, and that also remains an issue to build up the competitiveness of the economy. At the same time, as you mentioned about the increase in export also relates to increase in imports. That's another issue, and how to build up the local enterprises to be the supportive industries for the investments. And in terms of the competitiveness indexes, you have already mentioned that for certain indicators, Vietnam also stands at the same par with Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. So thank you once again. We will come back on the Q&A session for more discussions. May I now invite Dr. Pisit Puapan to give your insight on the theme of this session. You have the floor.
I think in terms of Thailand, the story, the economic growth story is a little bit different from our colleague from Laos and Vietnam. In the past 10 years, I think, as we all know, Thailand has been growing moderately. I think below our potential, as reflected in the GDP figure that you see. So because in the past 10 years, I think we have had the issue of political uncertainty facing the economy. So I think in terms of the economic growth, Thailand has been gradually recovery in our growth. So in the first quarter of this year, we were able to achieve 4.8% growth, which is quite a positive news for the country, that we are on path to our potential growth rate in the coming years. So I think in terms of the growth prospect of Thailand, we can see that growth in Thailand has been driven by export of the economy, whether it be export of goods or export of service in terms of tourism. So the growth driver in recent years coming from our trade with our partner, our neighbor, with trade with China, trade with Japan. So these are the supporting factor for our growth, and also increasingly the service sector in terms of our tourism has been very strong for Thailand. And I think the benefit is we hope that we are trying to spread the benefit of tourism growth across the region. So we can see in terms of when we look at our GDP figure, we can see that the growth is coming quite strong from the hotel and restaurant sector. So that reflects in the tourism, and also the transportation. In terms of when we look at the transportation, our strong growth coming from the air transport. So that related to tourism. So imagine later on, I will try to highlight the investment plan that the government has, that I think if we can improve our bottleneck in terms of the rail transport, the road transport, I think that could have a big potential for our growth in the future. So I think if you look at the growth story of Thailand, the potential growth is coming from the service sector that is coming, and also the industrial sector. If we look at the past recent years, the industrial sector has not doing so well. The growth in the industrial sector has been only 1 or 2% growth in recent years. So that's why the government is coming up with the 10 target industry that will revitalize our industrial capacity in the future. The government aim to target the growth sector that will be the future of the economy. Now we are talking about the new technology, the robotic technology, the digital economy. So we hope that we can transform our economic production toward the new sector in the future. On the slide here, you see the economic stability. So the growth story in Thailand has been moderate. This year we have been growing at 4.8 and on the path of recovery. But the strength of the Thai economy at the moment that we see from the economic fundamental of Thailand are quite strong compared to many other compared to the advanced economy and compared to the other country. When we look at we have low inflation, low unemployment. Our external sector is quite strong. Current account in Thailand, we have been running massive surplus in our current account. That means we export more than import mainly. So last year we achieved the current account surplus, massive current account surplus, 10% of GDP, which is quite high. And this year we expect that our current account to be in surplus again for 9% of GDP. And with our current account, meaning our export more than import in recent years, that reflects in our international reserve at the high level. At the moment, we have over 200 billion US dollar in international reserve. So I think this, when at the ministry, we meet regularly with the foreign investor and also the rating agency, the S&P, Moody, and Fitch rating. I think we all agree that the economic fundamental of Thailand is quite strong, and that we are on the path to, if the economy can pick up the growth, I think that could really build the confidence of the investor in the coming years. On the next slide, I think we can see the again the fundamental, the financial and fiscal sector in Thailand is quite strong. In the banking sector, we have ample liquidity. The bank have low NPL. In the fiscal sector, our public debt to GDP is only 42% of GDP, compared to advanced economy. Like in many advanced economy, public government debt to GDP is well above 100% of GDP. So why do we keen to emphasize on this point? Because I think this will open up the fiscal capacity of Thailand for future investment. I will highlight later on what the government has in our plan for the future investment. I think in terms of the economic outlook, the only way that we can drive the growth in Thailand, and that will help the region as well, is through investment, greater investment that is needed in the country that can drive the growth in the future. And we have the fiscal, the public finance strength to invest in the future. So if we look at the moment, the public sector in Thailand has public debt to GDP about 41% of GDP. Actually, if we look in detail, if we take out the SOE debt, because public debt in Thailand include the state enterprise debt, which are profitable on their own operation. So actually, the government budget that have to pay service the debt is only on the government debt. If we take out the SOE debt of the public debt, the government debt actually is about 30% of GDP, so quite low. So overall, we see that Thailand have the fiscal capacity to invest in the future. Next slide. I think in terms of the growth this year, we expect the growth this year to be about 4.5% this year. The government, the top policy maker in Thailand, would like to target the medium-term growth of Thailand to be about 5%. So I think we have to drive the new policy trying to stimulate the growth of Thailand. In terms of now, I think the policy aspect of the Thai government, I would like to emphasize that the Ministry of Finance is working very hard on two particular policies. One is to promote the income, better income distribution in the country. The second policy is trying to promote, that I mentioned before, greater investment in the country. In terms of the income distribution, now we are trying to target the social welfare program. We try to target the low-income group. In the past, I think many countries in the region share similar experience that the government give social welfare spending that is not well targeted. Whether when we look at like oil subsidy, when we look at the agricultural subsidy, are not well targeted. It doesn't really, the money doesn't really go directly to the poor people, to the low income people. So Thailand, now we are trying to take the lead in target the low income group. The way that we are doing it is low income registration. We get the low income group to register as low income, and we check them their income with the tax authority. We check their low income with the land department. So we try to identify who are the really poor low income group. And actually, we have a database of 11.4 million people qualify as a low income group. We define like we have a threshold of income less than 100,000 baht. So we are target this group of a database of low income. And now we are working across the government inter-ministry with different ministry, try to create a database of the low income so that in the future we know who are the poor people, and the government can channel our support directly to them. So actually at the moment the 11.4 million people receive the economic benefit every month, like free subsidized transportation, subsidized convenient store purchase. So these are the things that we are working with the low income group. The second phase of the program, we are trying to upgrade their income earning capacity by providing training for them. So we are working with the working age and the low income group to provide the training. So these are the programs that I think can uplift the people at the grassroots level of the Thai economy to help them. Now come to the second major policy of the Ministry of Finance and of the government is through the investment. I think our country share similar experience in terms of the lack of infrastructure. I think Thailand, our major infrastructure development need would be in terms of the rail transport. So the government, whether it be in the city rail, meaning in Bangkok, Khon Kaen, Chiang Mai, Phuket, or the intercity rail, the State Railway of Thailand. So I think in the coming years, the government plan major investment in the rail development. So I think these are the things that the government plan, and also in terms of the logistics seaport. You might have heard about the EEC, Eastern Economic Corridor, that the government has in plan. We identified the eastern seaboard of Thailand. 30 years ago, Thailand moved to the industrial development through the development of the eastern seaboard. And now the government is reinvesting a major program again in the eastern seaboard under the EEC program, Eastern Economic Corridor. So the major project that is coming up in the EEC program are like the high-speed rail linking the Bangkok and Rayong province, the aerospace park that we are developing in Utapao International Airport, upgrading the Utapao International Airport, and also expanding the Lam Chabang and Mataput Seaport Phase 3. So these are the major programs, and from what we monitor, the government aim to achieve the award the contract within this year, and next year begin the construction. So within the next 5 years, I think you will see a major transformation of the EEC area in Thailand, and also the rail linkage. So EEC would be the Thailand export door to the world, but we link that to across the region, whether it be northern region, northeastern region, Khon Kaen. The production in the north and the northeast can be export to the world through the Lam Chabang seaport. So these are the government plan. So my final point is that the government cannot invest on our own. We have the fiscal capacity in Thailand, in our view, from the Ministry of Finance perspective. We have the financial capacity to do our investment, but we need the expertise from the private sector. So I think the important point is for the private sector to be involved with the government infrastructure investment. So we have a lot of PPP project. The high-speed rail would be a PPP project for the Bangkok and Rayong. The city mass transit are all PPP projects. So I think we can learn. We hope to share our experience, and Thailand can learn from other country experience as well in terms of the infrastructure development and financing that can benefit, and we can create the connectivity to the region, to our neighbor region. As I mentioned earlier, that our trade and tourism has been growing given the in the region. So I think the connectivity will be the way of the future development for Thailand and our neighbor country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pisit, for giving so much of information about Thailand's program and projects. Since Thailand is now poised for the economic recovery with 4.8% growth rate, and transformation is also witnessed with the emphasis on the new 10 sectors and other investment plans and programs, and you emphasize on the public-private partnership to realize the projects. Thank you once again. Now, may I request Dr. Tay Nguyen to provide your insights, please. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Tuda. So, so based on the previous presentation and my own experience, I would like to share with you about the examining the group movement and challenges covering the overall GMS countries. So, firstly, when we review the GMS country on overall, GMS countries remain low level of development in comparison with ASEAN, Asia, and the world in terms of GDP per capita, technology, infrastructure, financing, and human resource development. And also, we are now facing the new requirements of development, opportunities, and challenges are enormous of the GMS countries. And at the same time, the GMS is the only region in Asia that has the most comprehensive pack on accelerating for cross-border transport. And we can we can review the GMS has also created a regional integration window, especially for Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam. So based on the what the lesson learned, so we can review the challenges we are now facing for the development of GMS countries. So actually, challenges lie in deeper integration into value chain, development of logistic facilities, and strong participation from private sector. So some of the resource person already mentioned in the previous in their presentation. And also, GMS countries have along roads and borders and creating favorable conditions for development of border trade. That is why, and at the same time, GMS could become a new manufacturing hub of ASEAN and the world due to inexpensive labor and we have young population. And the biggest challenges is actually the institutional quality and business competitiveness. That is to meet the international standards and to conduct the global and regional value chain. And at the same time, we are also facing lengthy custom clearance procedures at the border checkpoint and other technical barriers cause unnecessary delays and adding costs. But still facing at the border checkpoint, even though we have already established a single stop inspection at every border checkpoint, this is the major. These are the major challenges and problems and obstacles for the movement of goods and services and also transport. And various initiatives and programs to promote regional connectivity, facilitate trade and investment, and foster sustainability development. This is very important for the development of GMS country in the future. So that is so how do we speed up the GMS countries for the deeper integration? So firstly, GMS countries should strengthen infrastructure connectivity, and then we should boost our cooperation on facilitation and transport and trade. That is to gradually remove the movement of goods and services and transport as well. Actually, the infrastructure connectivity has yet to be completed, especially in Myanmar. But the transportation network is road dominated, as you all know, and the railway infrastructure is also outdated, and the connectivity between seaport and inland container depot with the production center is also under development. But according to the Hanoi Action Plan 2018-2022, was developed to provide necessary adjustment and sharpen the focus to maximize the effectiveness of the GMS economic cooperation programs. And then the sub-region's competitiveness is improving through efforts to facilitate transport and trade, enhance agricultural export, and promote GMS as a single tourism destination. So it will be important to continue cutting red tape and remove the remaining barriers to trade and transport. So I'm very optimistic that the sub-region will meet its challenges and capitalize on emerging opportunities. That is why we need to continue efforts to implement trade and transport facilitation measures which are critical to support further development of GMS economic corridors. So we should consider how to encourage greater cooperation among member countries in undertaking trade promotion activities, accelerating the development of economic corridors and cross-border trade infrastructure, and improving trade management capacity. And we also need to encourage the implementation of China-ASEAN and early conclusion of the regional comprehensive economic program partnership, and also need to seek to synergize and complementary between the GMS program and other regional and global initiatives, such as ASEAN Economic Community, the Belt and Road Initiative, Mekong Potential Cooperation Mechanism, CLMV Cooperation, and Ayawadi Chowphya Mekong Economic Cooperation Strategies, and other regional cooperation framework, etc. So the participation of border provinces became less substantive and active because at the border checkpoint, the border provinces trade with each other, but they are not always trade with the designated border checkpoint due to infrastructure programs and some cumbersome border trade regulations and measures. So that is why the role of GMS border provinces should be strengthened, including and through the GMS governor forums and by creating an enabling environment for domestic investment in border provinces. So all member countries ratifying the GMS cross-border transport facilitation agreement and its NSM protocol and also agree on MOU for the early harvest implementation of CPDA. So that should be allowing sub-regional movement of commercial vehicle and container still facing at the same border checkpoint, especially for example Mesa Miyawati to the way Tilawa special economic zone. And GMS economy in the future, GMS economic driver in coming year will be young entrepreneurs, women-led entrepreneurs, micro, small and medium enterprises, and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lin, for giving a comprehensive perspective on the Greater Mekong sub-region. What are the issues? Basically, it relates to the cross-border trade facilities, and that has been one of the issues that that has been posing a lot of problem for the seamless trade between the countries, and at the same time strengthening the infrastructure, particularly the connectivity issue that you have highlighted, and as well as to build in synergies among and the complementaries among between the different regional frameworks that is in place. Thank you once again for your insights. Before I open up the discussion to the floor, I would like to reflect on the key theme of this session, basically on prevailing conditions and the factors that limit GMS economies from advancing at a speed that meets the fast-changing need of the region and the world. So this is one of the very crucial elements of this session. So I request the panelists to give your reflection, particularly since Mekong is to be a capacity development organization. So my queries will be basically directed to that angle. So as we know that the future workforce or the human resource development and the training must keep pace within the technology adoption rate. It is well understood that operating future manufacturing goods as well as services will require different skill sets that most from those than that of the current workforce. So what suggestion you'd like to put forward for the GMS countries, basically in identifying such skill sets and repositioning them to cater to the growing demand of the new skills for the workforce? This is one. Second question is related to the R&D. To keep pace with the level of the technological change, and it is important that the R&D, research and development, become crucial for the enterprises. But in the region, we all know that 98 to even 99% of the enterprises are small or medium size. So it might be quite difficult to keep pace with the trend of the technological change. So what kind of suggestion you'd like to put forward for the national institutions or the national policies to support the enterprises and other R&D institutions to cater to the needs of the great demand? Two questions. One is on the workforce skill development, and second is on related to R&D perspective.
I think in terms of the workforce development, in Thailand, the Ministry of Finance trying to, one of them, we create a lot of educational financing loan program for the low income. That is our direct responsibility in terms of educational policy of Thailand. We create an educational loan program for the low income families. So that is one. But in terms of I think, but looking to the future, we need high technology and high knowledge workforce in the future. So I think the issue is how can we harness the technology. I think, in my view now, to learn from the best professor in the world is not 10, 20 years ago, we cannot imagine university can learn from a professor from the top leading university of the world. But now I think the internet has opened up the new door to learning opportunity. So I think the Thai government, in Thailand, we need to work to upgrade the people access to the leading university, leading technology. But in terms of the EEC, we have, that I mentioned in my presentation, the EEC, we have invited a leading university, Carnegie Mellon Engineering School, to set up a university campus in the EEC area. So I think this is one of the pilot project that we can, if the GMS region can attract leading institution, educational institution and research institution to learn, to set up their operation in our region. I think we can learn from these new institutions. So I think basically workforce of the future, we need to have access to technology and but I think the important point in Thailand, in my own personal view, is the language barrier. The people are not the general population are not familiar with English or the Chinese language. So I think these are the barrier to because most of the cutting edge knowledge or are written or are spoken in English. So if you don't know English by the time you are high school, you cannot hope to. When we are talking about high technology, high knowledge workforce, are university and upper education level. So I think this is one of the foundation and one of the area that we have to work on. Your second question on R&D, from the Ministry of Finance, we are trying to give tax incentive for the R&D, triple deduction for the R&D spending by the private sector. So these are the things that we hope. But I think R&D will have to come after the development of the workforce. Until you have a high knowledge workforce, you cannot hope to have a R&D and the commercialization of R&D. So I think it's one of the cause and effect of the economic planning.
Thank you very much for sharing your insight. Quite informative. Dr. Trump would like to reflect.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there are two issues. The first is the forthcoming activities of the government, because we all know that general industrial 4.0 now is coming. Actually, it's coming along some years ago, but it's not. But I don't know why this time many countries seem awake about this story. But actually, that's already happened. And we all did not know that the labor cheap labor cost is undermining because of that. And what the government doing is now is try to transform the economic. First is to try to reform the higher education, so that we will try jump into a different stage of the production rather than only manufacturing. That's the first point. The second point is relating with the strategy of FDI attraction. We no longer attract whatever coming, but we focus on the big company, and the company will generate the supporting industries. Because we hope that we will get the technology transfer from that flow of FDI. So the strategy of FDI changes, and we also have a strategy for domestic development that's also focused on some robotic or some other things relating with the 4.0 revolution. But honestly, we must confess that that's really challenging for Vietnam. There one issue relating, we might hear about the story of Uber and Grab, and in Vietnam we also facing the same problem. Now the government tries to generate the legal framework so that it make the new generation of taxi or new generation of industry have the same flow with the traditional one, or at least it's not compete or it crowding out the traditional industries. But that's really challenging. And relating with the second question about R&D, yeah, we all know that for developing country or just the country just come from the poor country like Vietnam, we do not expect much about R&D development, particularly from the older style. I mean the government style. It seems that we fail with the investment into the R&D institution owned by the government, and we now changing the idea where we think that R&D development will be subject to the private or the firm sector, business sector. They will do the R&D if they need that, and the role of the government is to provide the incentive in some cases. And we all know that R&D is not in the small firm, but it's not also a very big firm, because the big firm they get the scale efficiency and then they have a little motivation for reform. But medium scale company will be subjected. So that's the way the government now try to focus on the R&D activity. But at first we try to get the technology transfer from FDI sector and from outside at the same time with the innovation development. So that's some information from Vietnam.
Thank you, Dr. Tan, for your kind response. May I request Bantawat?
Okay, so actually, as our friends already talk about the R&Ds and also the skill development. So for me, I think just to complement, because for Laos, for example, if we talk about the skill development, we have to think about how to provide a appropriate skill that really, how to say, that is realistic, or how to say that is related to this era, the advancement of technology. So of course, continuing the education is the first thing that we have to do, but we have to think about the new skill that is come with the new era as well. So for this, I think because we know that there are quite disparities in terms of skill between countries or even within the country. So the one policy that we can encourage is to promote the technological transfer, because many developing countries trying to attract FDI, but we know that we are not quite successful in trying to encourage them to transfer technology, which is the key to improve the skill and also to improve the productivities of people when there is no FDI anymore. And other thing is to think about the skill that is more, not really, how to say, the skill that come with the new business. For example, we try to encourage the people to invest not for the big business, but something like some kind of to provide a platform for small business, like people who try to invest. Like to provide a platform for example, the angel investment, for example, the platform for people to work with technology and try to develop this skill. So I think this is another thing that we have to think about. And for the R&D, I think for me, for developing countries, I think just to utilize the existing technology, I think this is more important, because we are not thinking about the development of R&Ds with a limited budget here. But of course, for the advanced economy, this is very important.
Thank you, Dr. Sita Bandit. May I now ask Dr. Lin, can you be brief?
So regarding the development of skill, in Myanmar there are many professional university, college and institute. Now Ministry of Education is working together with the Singapore training school for providing the TVET program for upgrading the skill especially for younger generation. and according to the investment regulations, we also liberalize the opening up of foreign private education sector in Myanmar for learning and joining the university in from overseas countries. So because without the skill development, we could not able to establish the modern countries sustainability. So that is why Myanmar government tries to promote education sector and the skill development as much as possible for the economic development of Myanmar. And the next one is the research and development, which is very important. And without the research and development, we could not able to explore the new product and services and cannot able to compete within the region. So, that is why we are trying to conduct research activities for the potential sectors, especially for potential sector for example exporting which potential products must be promoted in various state and region in terms of trade promotion activities. This is one of the activities I would like to highlight in trading sector. But in manufacturing sector, we are now cooperation with the foreign direct investment to transfer the technology from foreign direct investment and to cooperate with them. And that is why Mekong Institute plays very important role for the for providing the technology and further cooperation within the chamber countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lin, for giving your response. This is now the Q&A session. I would like to open the for the Q&A session for the floor. Yeah, you may kindly introduce yourself in brief, and you can direct your question to the speaker.
Well, with gratitude, I was former ambassador to Vietnam, India, and Malaysia, and also was former Director General of International Economic Department, Foreign Office, oversee GMS, ACMEX, Mekong Ganges, and all things Mekong. Well, I have 3 points to raise to you. I'd just like Dr. Narongchai to listen, but he has to rush to the airport. I think what we have been sharing this morning, the most important element for promoting the GMS or Mekong country development is through economic cooperation. Certainly, infrastructure development. We already have very good road network linking China, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. If I may, you have a look at the map. But you know, I think this is a very good issue. Turn around and take off. We have been speaking. Certainly, many agreement has been implemented concerning the development of road network, infrastructure, transportation network, and CBTA, cross-border transport agreement, which up to now still hasn't been implemented. Buses, trucks have to stop over at the border and reload the goods and passengers. When are we to move forward? Not only use the word early harvest. So I suggest that for the East-West economic corridor, if to begin with, maybe the transportation company, bus and truck can do the joint venture, saying Thailand, Laos and Vietnam bus and truck company. If they have the joint company and then the same bus and truck can move across the border from Port of Da Nang and way to Tawai, okay? Because you know the problem that we are facing is not of the physical infrastructure, but illegal infrastructure indeed. The transportation business of each country is not yet prepared to open up their business to our neighboring country. Just for when I was ambassador to Vietnam, we've been negotiating how many buses or trucks can get into Vietnam. So we come up with some quota and so on. That's not the point that we should wait until another 10 years. And secondly, when I was ambassador to Vietnam, I've been trying to promote this East-West Economic Corridor, route number 8, number 9. We have now 4 bridges linking Laos and Thailand over Mekong River from Khon Kaen to Savanakhet to Mukdahan, 3 hours, and then you cross the bridge, you are in Savanakhet, you're having lunch there, and you can have dinner in Way. So one day you have 3 meals in 3 countries. So this is the program that I've been promoting. Now, after listening to all the points that you have raised, and in the past we have so many meetings, I expect that Vietnam should advertise about their Da Nang port or Way port, and Myanmar also should introduce Tawai port. This is the most important port, deep sea port that links Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. In 2006, I took delegation from Thailand. Also, Dr. Norongchai was at Uway port. So there were 4 cranes at the port at the time. I look up in the picture today, it's still 4 cranes. I don't see any enlargement or facility of the port to go up. When I was ambassador to Vietnam, I tried to promote the Thai tourists, Thai business to go to use the Da Nang and Way port. But maybe someone from Da Nang is here. When I visit Da Nang, the chief minister said, well, please tell the Thai investor to come to Da Nang port. We have 10-meter deep seaport and all facilities. When I go to Way, then the chairman of People Committee said, well, ambassador, could you please bring the Thai investor coming to use Way port? We have 12-meter deep seaport and even more competitive. So I think it's about time that we should think regional. We are not thinking about national. I'd like to change the word competitiveness to speeding up cooperation and connectivity. Thank you very much.
Any other comment or question or suggestion from the floor? There's one. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Clemens Grunbill. I'm the policy coordinator at Stockholm Environment Institute, and I also used to be an MI staff member. Thank you for the very interesting discussion. I would like to steer the discussion towards something that Dr. Narongchai mentioned this morning, which is the SDGs. All of the Mekong countries have subscribed to the SDGs. So I'm thinking from the discussion that I heard here, everything is geared towards economic growth, right? Opening borders, connectiveness, facilitation of trade. Everything is geared towards economic growth, and we're assuming that economic growth will bring more welfare to our populations, which is a good thing. However, economic growth also comes with additional resources and additional energy. If you look at the ASEAN State of the Environment report, Thailand, for example, will be dependent on fossil fuels for at least the next 50 years. So even though the energy mix is slightly changing with more alternative fuels coming in, with the more alternative energy coming in, we will still remain dependent on fossil fuels, meaning continuing CO2 emissions and continuing effects on the climate. I think that this is also part of our welfare, not only generating income, not only GDP growth, but also resources that we can conserve and save for future generations, as well as the environment that affects us directly in terms of health, in terms of quality of life. Okay, I would have liked to hear, when we talk about challenges, a little bit about resources and how we deal with environment in a regional way rather than just in a national way as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other question? We can take one or two, then I will leave it to the panelists to respond to the queries. Yeah, one more.
My name is Tay Nguyen. I am from Mekong Institute. I have a question to Dr. Thang, the case of Vietnam. You talk about economic growth and FDI company and the linkage between the FDI enterprise and the domestic SME. Per our understanding is the link is quite weak so far. So like, we want to learn from you more about how the country can promote the spillover effect, mean the technology transfer from FDI to the domestic company to increase their competitiveness. And you just mentioned earlier about the strategies for the domestic development. So can you specify in details what strategies in place and what's not in place yet? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. So if there's no other question, because we have to rush for lunch as well, I would hand over the microphone to the panelists to respond to the three queries and suggestions that we have received from the floor.
Yeah. Can people see the slide? Yeah, this one. Yes. Yeah, relating with the connectivity between Vietnam, I think, Laos and Cambodia and Myanmar, I think that's quite important. Yeah. I wish to show you the geographical map so that you might have some further information about why it's not so strong. The connectivity is not so strong. Working? Yes. Oh, it's not this one. Yeah. So during the waiting for technical fixing, I answered the question about the weak linkage between FDI and domestic firms. So we all know that firm is a profit maximization. They will find the linkage is good if they get a profit from that kind of linkage. Of course, there are two reasons that explain the poor linkage in Vietnam. One is the underdeveloped of the private sector, because private sector is young. And the second is because of we are nearby a cheap resource of input, I mean the China. So most of FDI firm in Vietnam, they import from China with the very cheap resources. So that's explain why they do not focus on develop the domestic linkages. Of course, the government, so far the government has been have some program for supporting industry. We give some promotion in terms of firm invested in the supporting industries, and also we also try to encourage the FDI firm to establish the strategy of developing their network supplier in Vietnam. I think a new strategy. We will so far we have a developing the new strategy for FDI attraction, and we hope that the problem is will be fixed. But honestly, it's not in the short term, but it must be something in the long term. Connectivity. For connectivity issues, yeah, we all understand that since this morning we emphasize quite a lot about the cooperation among countries, among Vietnam and some other countries, and we understand that individuality is weak. Why? One reason is what's the benefit of each country in such kind of connection? For example, from Vietnamese side, we look into what's the benefit of connection between Laos and Vietnam. We all know that we have a two border, quite a border gate, quite a good border gate in Hà Tĩnh, and one is in Da Nang. That's two corridors that Vietnam try to develop, and I am one of the person who try. We design in the Hà Tĩnh part. We try to develop the framework for that. Yes, but the problem is the resources not relating with the government resource, because Vietnam tried to develop the along country infrastructure. We know that the infrastructure in Vietnam is still developed. And in terms of allocation, efficiency allocation of resources, the along country infrastructure is give more priorities in terms of the gross one. But yeah, I think the PPP, that's the one thing we have to think about us. But PPP is, we got a problem. Even the PPP in Vietnam, we got a lot of problem. So I think we need some further investigation about the motivation of firm of infrastructure builder rather than the government motivation. Because honestly, from my point of view, I don't think only the government attempt is enough for pushing up the connectivity. But private sector, we have to think about that.
Just briefly, I think I would like to agree with the comment by our Stockholm colleague about the resource. I think in our plan, in my presentation, I think the way that we're trying to invest infrastructure upgrading is also indirectly will contribute to the better efficient resource usage in Thailand. I think all of you that have been to Bangkok agree that most of our time in Bangkok on the road are spent stuck in traffic, wasting a lot of energy. And I think the Ministry of Transport, they show the data that per kilometer usage of road compared to the rail transport is much more efficient in terms of energy use for the rail. So I think Thailand is trying to promote the shift of the our transportation mode to more efficient. But I think overall picture, we are trying to, I think the government is trying to think of how can we use technology to better efficient use of our resource, whether it be time or energy and everything. And I think the world is changing. I think all of us here, I think in my university days, when I look at the top leading company of the world are like Exxon, resource company, Exxon Mobil, GE. But now I think I heard the news that the top company in the world, Apple, just break the $1 trillion, the first company in the world to break the $1 trillion market capitalization. And I think when you look at the top company of the world, Apple, Amazon, Google, and I think we can see that the world is shifting to the digital economy, and I think that can better make us better use of our resource in the future. So I think the agenda now is trying to use the technology to make things more efficient.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pisit. I think it's time to wind up. Let me just briefly summarize. We had a very interesting panel here, and we had got a lot of insights into the issues that have been confronting the region. We have learned that the countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, are emerging, and as we know, Thailand and China are in a high level of trajectory of growth, and Vietnam is also catching up. There are a lot of issues that we need to ponder with, particularly with Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam and Myanmar. And there is need for sharing of the knowledge and the development. And for that, we need to have coherent national policies, as well as synergies in the policies between in the countries, so that we come out with building a collaborative network within the GMS region to meet up and face the challenges in the new era of globalization and innovative development. With this, I once again thank all the panelists here, Dr. Lin, Dr. Satbandit, Dr. Tan, Dr. Pisit, for your time and joining us and sharing your insights and perspective. And thank you once again very much. Thank you to all the delegates here.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Duta, and to our panelists. But before we go to the much-awaited lunch, I just have a few announcements. First, we would like to encourage all participants to please fill in the survey form that is in your conference kit. It's very important for us to know your comments so that we know how to improve the Mekong Forum next year. Another one, if you would be needing transport services to the airport, please coordinate with our registration booth so they can provide you transportation going to the airport. And lastly, before you go to lunch, make sure you have a coupon, and the lunch will be at the lobby, at the restaurant nearby lobby. It's called Ju Fang Restaurant, and all of us will be there. So now, I'd like to invite everyone for the lunch, and please be back here at the hall around 1:45 so we can start our afternoon session by 1:45. Thank you and enjoy your lunch.